I know you're gonna dig this.
This is Rhine McLin, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles, recorded live here at DATV Studios in Dayton, Ohio. And now, Skyping all the way from Scotland, which is a country, is Jesse Rae. Welcome.
Ryan, what a pleasure this is and an honor.
You know, we've been trying to do this for a while, and I'm so glad that we're able to get this done right at the end of the year. I can see your Christmas tree, so we know that it's December, and it's a good time for us to discuss your relationship with funk. So I'm going to start off with, tell me, Jesse, how did you get introduced to the funk and brought you to where you are today?
Well, I was always into soul and funk when I was a laddie, and I had local bands doing that. And but really, I found an old Parliament Funkadelic record in what they call a jumble sale, which is just one of these places where people put stuff out they want to sell. And I immediately hit on that was the kind of music that I associated myself with. Being in the Scottish borders here, I was a bit isolated, and that was a really good thing because it allowed me to develop my own music and develop the funk.
So do you play an instrument?
I use it just really for writing, because I work with such great people that I just sort of let them do their bit so I can sing. But yeah, I started off playing guitar and rhythm guitar and bass and a little bit of keyboard.
So what got you interested into writing music?
I don't know really. I think that, some of your past guests have talked about, how the arts, the same thing here in the Scottish borders. We used to have all the arts, and we used to have plenty of music, tuition and instruments and stuff like that we could do. But that, again, has all been taken away. So I just really decided to concentrate on myself and developing the funk, well, the Scots funk that I call it, and really just, absorb as much of nature and the things that are around me to try and come up with original themes. So I just started writing songs.
So I know that you've done some time in the States. So would you please talk to us about your experiences in the States?
Well, I was in London, and I wanted to get out, and I wasn't quite sure where in the States I was going to go. I knew that Plainfield, New Jersey was the area that I wanted to go to, but I answered an advert in the Melody Maker, and it was for a heavy metal band. Of all things, but I thought, well, if they could pay for a ticket for me, then it was in Cleveland, Ohio, and I thought, okay, I'll go out and do that. But the band split up quite soon after that, and then I was kind of trapped with the green card thing. So basically, I just had to put together with some friends there bands to do the club circuit, and that's when I learned about how tough it was to do music that wasn't your own music, doing 6 sets a night, 6 nights a week. And I was trapped. I don't say trapped in a bad way, but I was in Ohio for 3 years around the Cleveland area, just doing club work.
Well, that club work is hard work.
Oh, it's tough. It's tough.
Now, what was the name of the group that you were with when you were in Cleveland?
A group called Granicus. And then we put together the boys. And then I brought a friend over, a lad called John Waite, who went off to do the boys. And he had that big hit called Missing You.
Okay. And so during the 3 years, did you record any music with your group?
Not really, no. It was just doing club work and to, make a living until I could get enough money to go to Boston, was the next place I was going to Boston. And when I got to Boston, I was in the Holiday Inn, and the door opened, and there was this gentleman, all brightly coloured, and with a bunch of cassettes in his hand. And we literally bumped into each other, and I dropped mine and he dropped his, and this was Bernie Worrell. And he said, God, Scotland and funk, and let's go up. And so we went up to his room, and immediately we hit off, and we had, this rapport as friends, start as friendship. And then I went across to one of the venue where the band were playing that night, the Sugar Shack in Boston. And that was when it struck me that everything that I'd been trying to put together was there in front of me.
Right there.
Right there.
At that moment in time in Boston.
In Boston.
So tell me what happened from there.
Well, Bernie told me about this woman called Ruth Copeland who used to be with Sly Stone. And she was making an album for RCA, and she said that Bernie said, "Look, I'm going to be working on it. Why don't you go to see her and write songs for her?" So I went to see her, wrote some songs for her, and then she was on RCA, and we went to New York and we recorded the album. And I was introduced to Daryl Hall and from Hall & Oates, and we did the backing vocals for it. And one of the songs, Win or Lose, Ruth recorded. And Bernie was on it, Steve Jordan. That was the first time I met Steve Jordan. And he was just a kid, at that time. And some great other musicians that were around at the time doing the album, popping in and popping out. But it solidified my friendship with Bernie again. And we knew then we were going to have to write stuff together.
So, I need you to explain who Steve Jordan is.
Steve Jordan is a great drummer. A lot of folk might know him for Saturday Night Live, the David Letterman show, the Blues Brothers.
Okay.
But Steve was doing jazz. His dad, he was young then, and his dad was taking him along to the jazz clubs at night in New York, so I'd go along and see him playing.
Wow, just listening to your journey through the music industry is so exciting. I just want to hear more. So after Boston, where to?
New York. We made the album in New York at RCA Studios, and
what was the name of the album?
Take Me to Baltimore with Ruth Copeland. So so again, I started to meet other musicians through Bernie, and I ended up doing hand claps on a lot of the P-Funk songs because I go along to the studio when Bernie was recording. And
excuse me, Jesse, explain what hand claps are.
Well, I've got a really loud hand clap. And I'm pretty good on the meter, so I just they would shove me into the booth, and I would just do a whole bunch of overdubs of hand clapping, for the tracks.
Oh, okay. I'm learning something new every time. I always learn something new, so now I know that could be an opportunity for me if I wanted to reinvent myself to be a hand clapper.
I think it's a few steps up from being a roadie.
Oh, Okay. Well, you've known that I've always wanted to be a roadie, and now you've given me something new to aspire to, and I want to be now a hand clapper. Okay.
I think that's a far better job.
Oh, okay. So continue telling me about where we are now.
So really, through Bernie again, I met my friend Nairobi Sailcat, and he wanted to put together the Space Cadets. And that was really the next stage we went to. Nairobi and me, we got a flat together in upstate, I think it was 86th and, what was it, Broadway or something? And anyway, so we worked all the time on songs, and we wrote some songs together like "Pump It Up" and you know, some of the I guess Nairobi used to be in P-Funk himself as a guitarist, and so he had the ability to call in, like, as I said, Tyrone Lampkin, the late Tyrone Lampkin, and some of the other musicians that were associated with P-Funk.
So how long did the Space Cadets last?
They're still going, actually. I'm still writing some songs with the new Space Cadets. With
the
Nairobi.
new Space Cadets, okay.
Yeah, he's moved to Vegas now, so there's an album that's just coming out, and I'm writing some stuff for the album after that. So really, the Space Cadets, it was going to be like so many bands, and I've heard some of the stories that have come from Dayton. It's all a matter of luck, and it's all a matter of being in the right place at the right time. And I don't think Vanguard was the record label for the Space Cadets, and I think at the time it was just a wee bit too far ahead, some of the things that we wanted to do, and it didn't really go, as far as they were concerned, it didn't really go in that much further.
So is it my understanding that now a lot of bands that really want to make it or be on the scene or go to Vegas? Is that what's happening?
I don't know. I think Vegas is becoming a hot spot. I've heard some of your other guests and that who've moved to Vegas. I'm not sure about Vegas at all. I mean, I think Dayton is the most important place in the world for funk. So I think that I would like to see that rejuvenated now with the new Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center.
Yes, that would be really nice, and that's what we're really working toward. But I want to go back, now when did you, I guess the question would be, when did you leave the Space Cadets physically? And I know you still have your connections with the Space Cadets, but when did you physically remove yourself from the band?
I've never left. It's just that it's taken years to get the new stuff done now. So really, with the Space Cadets, you never leave the Space Cadets. Never leave them. And, you know, because Bernie's passed now, he would have been involved in this new album as well.
You speak of Barry with affection. What was Barry to you?
Bernie Worrell, that's a tough one. You know, you meet people in your life that you might not see all the time, and we've had gaps between us like 18 years even, but we're always in tune. We were always in tune with each other. We were always we could write songs long distance with each other. In fact, jumping forward a bit, in 1994-95, I pioneered this thing called ISDN broadcasting through a telephone line, and we were writing songs together. He would go into a studio which is no longer there, House of Music in New Jersey, which was a great funk studio. Charlie Conrad was the owner. And I recorded a lot of my stuff there with the lads that we just discussed. But I put in this thing called an ISDN line, which is sort of like a posh telephone line, but it's got a box that converts it to digital, and then your singing or your instrument just comes out the way that you've done it back in Scotland. So we were pioneering that, and yeah, Bernie and me, God, if I jump back again to 1980, when we were in New York, this was just prior to, I'm sorry for jumping about a bit, but history's like that. When Bernie and me were writing stuff together before the Space Cadets, because that was really 1982, the Space Cadets, I said to Bernie one day, you know, music video is going to be coming in, and I'd always seen pictures in my music, and my background was art school, and I knew that sound and pictures were going to be one together. And I said, look, Bernie, you know, let's start writing for pictures, and let's start making music videos. And Bernie was that kind of person, that classically trained at Juilliard, you know, in a perfect pitch, just and a fantastic person and a great friend. So we managed to together write some great stuff. And one of the things I wanted to test out in 1980 was when I saw a music video coming in, or it was just the very start of it. I mean, I think the first one I did was in 1979. I said to Bernie, you know, this is a really powerful medium, you know, so why don't we do something really crazy, right? Let's do a funk song that's got classical in it. And what I'll do is, and it was 1980, remember, and we're back to this old carry on with, you know, Russia and America and the rest of the world and all that stuff. So I said, look, I'll sing it in half Russian and half Scots. And we'll just see if this medium that we're working in is as powerful as it really is. So we wrote Russia together. And it was just in a small, we started off in a small studio, Ted Spencer's studio in New York. And it was only, I think, a 16-track or an 8-track to begin with. And Bernie came in, and I had laid down a bass track and some vocal things. And then I said to Bernie, I just said, there's the track, Bernie, go next door and you just do what you do. And the great thing about Bernie and me was that it was a bit like dolphins swimming together. You know, we could always do something completely separate in two separate rooms, but when you played it on the machine, it fitted perfectly. You know, we were that way inclined. So Bernie did his classical bit. He did all that stuff with a funk track, perfect. And then I did these vocals that were sort of like a red choir vocals. And yeah, that was really the start of a new venture into sound and pictures together that Bernie and myself did.
That is such an intriguing story about you and Bernie. So what else did you and Bernie do?
Well,
I have the background of you and Bernie. Now let's fast forward on you and Bernie, because I know.
It's so weird. It's so weird, Ryan. You know, when I heard Bernie wasn't well in 2016, I had already been coming up with these ideas of the multi-tracks that I had been recording way back in 1980, 1981. And some of them in Dayton with Roger Troutman producing them. And thankfully I brought the 24-track multi-tracks back to Scotland. And they sat on the shelf there for 30 odd years. And this Welsh guy called David Turner, who was a fan of mine, and he said, look, is there any things that we could put out And I said, yeah, certainly. I knew Bernie wasn't well. And I thought, now, why don't I make a double album of the work that Bernie and myself have done? But I'll do it as funk instrumentals. So instead of me singing and all the stuff, I wanted people to hear Bernie's playing and his, all the little notes he did. Because going back to the music video thing, when we worked on the tracks, I made it aware to Bernie, and Bernie was aware of that because he was also very much somebody who was animated in his playing, and he loved cartoon music, and he loved to bring in a bit of fun into the classical funk. And so I made this. The process is, it might be a technical thing, a little bit boring, but when you've got 24-track 2-inch multi-track tapes, and they're that old, you can't just put them on a machine and roll them off. You have to get what they call bake them. And you actually bake them in an oven. And you don't eat them, Ryan, you don't put cherries on them. But what you do is you immediately run it off onto digital. So this new album that I've got called Worae, which is Bernie and myself, Worrell and Rae together, I decided that, I'll keep it all funk instrumentals. And they are recorded in 1981, most of them. So when we were recording, it was a difficult time. We're talking about the financial side of things, because I started up this company called Scotland Video in New York, but we were a wee bit too far ahead of our time. And unfortunately, I think around about 1980, 81, they lumped in music video with these stupid ping pong games that they had going on, and they all called it video. So it was really hard to get investment. So really, we were struggling. But I had made all these multi-tracks to make the first dance music video that I thought we could put out commercially. That was 1980, 81. And but unfortunately, I got the money together for the soundtracks, which were these multi-track tapes. But I couldn't get the financing together for the filming of it. So what we've got on the Worae album is basically the soundtrack for the filming that's still got to be done. And I was having a word with Turk, and I really would love now to get the young students in the university to animate Bernie's in dance and even in drama. Every little part that Bernie plays, and animate it so that it's a visual, so that we could finally have music videos to go with these tracks. So all these multi-tracks, I went to town with it at the time, because we went to the power station in New York, which is no longer there. And we recorded with, as I said, I got Steve Jordan in again, and T.M. Stevens, and I'd like to say a message out to T.M. Stevens as well, because I hope he's listening. T.M.'s not been very well, so I think
Now who is he? Who is he? Tell me about him.
T.M. Stevens was the bass player in the Space Cadets.
Okay, he was in the Space Cadets.
Yeah, but he's done many other things. It's just that he's not well at the moment, and I think Steve Jordan is going to go see him and take a copy of the Worae album to him to kind of cheer him up. So really, this association with Bernie, what else did we do? Well, I knew Bernie wasn't well, and we had these recordings, and I made the Scottish Parliament aware that, the place that Bernie had in our Scottish culture. Now, I have a video that I did with Bernie called Over the Sea. I know it's a kind of, it's a funky Brigadoon, I'd have to say. But it was an outtake on a track that we were doing in the studio, and I think it was at Sigma Sound. And we used to go in there with, it was Steve Jordan, T.M. Stevens, Anthony Jackson. Do you remember the tune Money?
Oh, yeah.
That's Anthony playing the bass on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bernie, obviously, and, as many, of course, and the great Hiram Bullock. And Hiram was brought to me when we were through Steve Jordan, because Hiram Bullock was playing guitar on the David Letterman show and the Saturday Night Live show. These guys, everybody was just, popping, and jumping. Because that time, as I said, 1981 in New York, it was something else. So I did all these multi-tracks, and now, as I said, it's finally coming out now. And which is back to the Scottish Government. One of the tracks on it is the instrumental, or funk-instrumental version of Over the Sea. Now, just to show you how Bernie and me worked, we were in the studio doing this outtake, and Bernie just went on the keyboard, and I said, "Whoa!" I said, "Bernie, that's giving me the idea of a claymore," which is the big claymore sword there in the background. Claymore flying through the air. So we built an entire song from that one sound that Bernie did, and that's how we worked together. And so what happened with Over the Sea was, that was 1984. I decided I was going to make a music video of it. And I was going to throw my claymore from the top of the Brooklyn Bridge back to Scotland. So this sound was the way that Bernie and me worked. We could have one sound, and I could build an entire music video with him from that one sound. So what happened was, Over the Sea was that Russell McKay saw it, and they made all the Highlander movies based on it. They used my film crew and my location and everything else. So all the Highlander movies came from the blueprint of Over the Sea. And so one of the guys I have these Scottish fighting guys called the Clan that have been involved in some of my work, and in the filming. And one of them got hired for Mel Gibson, wanted to do Braveheart, and that's another story as well. That's a whole different story. But George Shoris Wallace wrote a very nice thing, and when they were making the Braveheart film, he thought of Bernie, and Bernie had said to him about Over the Sea, and it wouldn't be good if the claymore came down like in Over the Sea, and they did that in the film. So that's what they did. So one of the things that Shoris Wallace, the fighting coordinator for Mel Gibson, said was that if there hadn't been Bernie and there hadn't been Over the Sea, there would never have been Braveheart. And so I made that, I brought that to attention to the Scottish Parliament, because I knew Bernie was getting ill, and I knew that he'd just been made a doctor in Boston. No, sorry, New England Conservatory. And I thought, well, let's do something to kind of buck him up. But you know yourself, Ryan, the political process is a slow, grinding process. And unfortunately, Bernie passed before we could give him this proclamation from the Scottish Parliament. But what they did was that the Scottish Parliament acknowledged that Bernie Worrell was fundamental in our modern musical culture, and they acknowledged him for that. And so the only thing I could do was to send it to Judy Worrell, his widow, and she was delighted with it. But it was meant to be for him, for him to be appreciated, So the story goes on because, as you know, that I wanted to do something else that would be to celebrate Bernie's life. And so I went off to this distillery in Scotland called Adelphi, and I saw this guy called Gordon Hamilton, and I said to him, look, I want a whiskey to celebrate Bernie Worrell's life and what he's done for Scotland. I don't drink myself, you know, but I wanted to have a whiskey that because I knew Bernie liked the Scottish whiskey in moderation. And I thought, what I'd like to do would be do something really different. Because of the technology, and we're back to technology again, a USB is small enough now that I could get it into the cork of the bottle. So I thought, wouldn't it be fantastic? You know, because I've got Bernie talking on the album, and wouldn't it be great to have his voice inside a bottle of whiskey? So this 36-year-old whiskey it wasn't accessible, because that covered us from 1981 through to 2017. And it was just in the time they had. So Adelphi suggested, look, why don't we make this special whiskey, because we've only got enough from these casks of 21-year-old and other one. Why don't we make it up to 36 to celebrate, and we've just enough to make 2 bottles? And I said, you know, that's a great idea, you know. So I had the music for the Worae album. I got it put into the cork and sealed. And this special whiskey, there's only 2 bottles of it, and one of them is going to the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Centre in Dayton. And it will remain there and continue to, as the years go by, to continue to build strength. And the wonderful thing is that it's got Bernie's voice in the bottle.
That is just fascinating. That's called the Worae blended malt funk. Malt funk whiskey. Yeah.
Now, I have to say something here, and it will be controversial. I understand that. There are only 2 bottles of it, but it is only for Afro-Americans. And the reason that is because one of the things that I've been well aware of, and I'm trying to make amends of, is that in black culture, so much has been taken away. And as you know, with your past guests, so little appreciation has been given to the amount of talent that's come out of Dayton, Ohio in particular. And what I wanted to do is, for Bernie had given us his all, his love, his affection, his friendship, and all the filming that we did here together in Scotland. He's contributed, and it's been officially recognised by the Scottish Parliament. So what would be the best thing that we could do would be to make a whiskey that was exclusively for Afro-America. And that's exactly what that is. I had a smell of it, but I'm not allowed to taste it. And that is the bottle that's on its way. I'm doing my launch, my Scotland launch for the Worae album on Friday, the next couple of days. And I think Mr. Webb's going to kindly do a live webcast to the audience. And then the bottle will be on its way to the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Centre. And as I say, its place will be there. I'm waiting for the opening, obviously, but that bottle will never be opened. And it'll sit there, as I say, as the years go by and the museum builds its strength and its resilience, so will the whiskey as well.
Well, the whiskey will have a special case at the Funk Museum. We're working hard to have an opening for the Funk Museum, and it's people like you, Jesse, that really inspires us and keeps us going to know how important and how internationally known funk music is. Now, tell me what you're doing now, Jesse. What are you doing now?
Well, I'm
And
writing
you got to explain, you have to, before it's all over today, you're going to have to serenade me. I wouldn't have it any other way. And then for our audience, you're going to have to explain your regalia.
Oh, Lord. Do I have to?
Well, I think it's going to be important. Now, I know we talked about the space cadets, but that's not your regalia is not space cadetish.
Well, I've always worn the kilt, so I wore the kilt in the Space Cadets. That's not a problem. But then, when music video came in, let's go to Dayton. When I was going to be signed directly by Warner Brothers, but I decided that I was going to marry the drummer girl, Audrey, in the video, and I was going to move back to Scotland because I want to bring my family up in Scotland, and I wanted to just go out and tour and work in the States. But the residency thing changed, and I had to sign with WEA in London, and I thought, oh my God, because the English, they're not funky, and also how on earth was I going to get over, what I was doing. My music was for America and the rest of the world. So anyway, it turned into a disaster, the record deal. But one of the good things that came out of it, thankfully, was that Rob Dickens from WEA wanted Roger Troutman to be my producer for the Thistle album in 1984-85. Well, I knew nothing about Roger at all. And as I said to you, my association with funk was always New Jersey and P-Funk. That's where I thought everything came from. And so they let me hear this track called, I think it was Computer Love. It might have been Computer Love. And there was another track. But anyway, and I said, whoa, the production on this is, amazing. So I went along with it because at the time, my friend Jimmy Douglas, and I have to say to Jimmy Douglas, congratulations, Jimmy, for the 4.44 and Jay-Z's album. Jimmy is now in Miami, and he's done everybody will know Jimmy Douglas, the senator, for all the Miss Elliott and Justin Timberlake's record and Timberland and all the great work he's done. But anyway, he's just been nominated as a producer for Jay-Z's album. So congratulations, Jimmy. But at the time, he was actually, and I know that David loves the Average White Band. At the time when I was in New York, I used to go along to Atlantic Studios and see my friends in the Average White Band. And Jimmy was the engineer. And I got to know Jimmy well. So when it came to doing the album, I wanted Jimmy to produce my album. But WEA didn't recognize him enough for whatever the reason was, and I was really disappointed. But they said, look, go to Dayton and make the album in Dayton. So I says, okay, I'll go to Dayton. I didn't know anything about Dayton. I've been in Ohio before, as you remember, but not been to Dayton. So anyway, I flew into Dayton, and it was brilliant. His dad picked me up in this limo, and his dad started to tell me, Roger's dad, tell me about Scotland. And I says, whoa. I says, what's going on here? Well, Mr. Troutman Sr., who Mr. and Mrs. Troutman were brilliant, was based in Holyloch in Scotland during the Second World War. So he knew about Scotland. So anyway, I went to the Stofers Inn. You remember the Stofers?
It used to be.
Yeah. And I'm a person that has to, because I sing, I have to have fresh air. And you couldn't open the windows, so I had to take a chair at the windows to break the window so I could get fresh air. So I think I was a bit notorious for that. But anyway, Mr. Troutman Sr. took me over to the studio and tell me the story of Scotland. I know. Well, I filmed it as well. I couldn't stand it. And I met Roger. And immediately we hit off. And Lester Troutman as well was there at the time. And Larry's brother. And we hit off straight away. I would have to say, because Roger had his fingers in so many pies, Shirley Murdoch's record he was making at the time, and a whole bunch of other things, that I spent a lot of time walking up and down the hotel room waiting for Roger to come back into town, but that's a different story. But anyway, when we did get in the studio, we did the same thing as all people do that are in the sound labs in Dayton. We worked continuously, day and night. And it was just such a pleasure to be introduced to the Dayton funk. And this is where my eyes were opened up to where we are right now, the talent that was there. So what happened was that when I started making the music videos, and I did Over the Sea, there's a shot in Over the Sea where the helmet comes off, but you don't see me. And what happened when we were recording, Roger never saw me without my helmet. And when we were recording in the studio there was these little kids came to the door, and they were nephews, I think, of Roger's or some of the Troutman family. And they all appeared at the back door with 7-Eleven brown paper hats over their heads with a couple of holes in it and a feather, like a crow's feather or something, sticking on top. That's when I realized that music video was a very powerful thing, and I couldn't take off my helmet even if I wanted to. That's the reason that I've had it on for the last 40 or 50 years, is that you've got to be true to your art. So the Troutmans, Lester came in and was doing drums on a lot of the stuff, and Zap, and Roger's son, and Roger himself, obviously doing tons of stuff. The only problem that I had was that there are a few people that, like Skip McDonald from Little Axe, is from Dayton, Ohio, who's a great funk friend of mine as well. Roger was very competitive. And I think WEA had said, you know, Roger, do what you like, you know, take everything that's out there. Well, the problem was that he wanted to replace a lot of things that were already there. And we couldn't do it because I'd spent like an absolute fortune, 55 grand, I think it was, and that's pounds, in making this Thistle album video with me standing on a train, steam train, going through with Bernie and all the guys on it, and Bernie playing. And I'd already filmed all this stuff. So I think that WE wanted to replace all the parts. So we had a wee run in now and then, because he'd want to play all new bits, and I had to explain to him, well, I've already filmed all this, and we can't really, you know, change it. But we found a compromise, and the more that Roger understood about music video and what I was trying to do, it was a lot easier to get things done. And so there are some versions, like the Thistle, the version of Over the Sea that was re-recorded in Dayton, I really don't like at all. It's beautiful parts that Roger put on, but you know, I couldn't replace Hiram Bullock. You know, Hiram to me was the ultimate guitar player. You know, so the good things were like Be Yourself. You know, hey, you can be yourself, be your own funky self, be yourself. You know, that stuff, yeah, Roger could get his teeth into it. And we did some really nice tunes like Don't Give Up. But once he understood, and this is the sad bit about when you go to a place like Dayton, and someone who's in Dayton hasn't been to Scotland. What I was trying to do with the album was basically to do a sort of P-Funk, Scots P-Funk thing. And Roger and Zap is a whole different thing. So Roger, it wasn't until Roger came to Scotland when we were filming. And I mean, I was hard on Roger, you know, because Roger was so cool with the pie, and, you know, he was such a cool person. But, you know, I made him dress up, and he wouldn't wear a kilt. I'll give him his dues there. He wouldn't wear a kilt, but he wore tartan trews, and he had the sporran, obviously the sporran, but he swung it on the side, and that was very cool. And when he came over to Scotland to film, I put him on the back of a flatbed trailer, and I drove this tractor on the front of it, and I dragged them all through Edinburgh. But everything was all like I do all the time when I'm filming. It's real music, you know. There's amps and everything's plugged in, and there's power and all that stuff, so everybody could play. So Roger had a blast, but I took him down to the Scottish borders, and it was about 40 miles away from Edinburgh. And I just stuck him on the back of this trailer because I wanted him to experience what Scotland's, the elements of Scotland were like. You know, I'd look over every now and then, he'd be, you know, try to keep warm, and yeah. And then I took him to this beautiful hotel, old hotel that's down the River Tweed, called the Dry Abbey Hotel. And I dumped him off, and I said, well, we'll be filming tomorrow morning. And I helped him take his bags up to his room. And he said, hang on, wait, he says, there's no phone, there's no television. I said, well, so what, Roger, you know, just enjoy being here. And he was freaking out for a little while. So anyway, next morning I came down with the tractor to pick him up. And there he was, sitting out the front of the hotel, the little pinky cocked, and he was drinking some coffee, sitting looking completely at ease. And I knew that would happen, because once you forget about the technology for a little bit, and you take in the history, and you take in the funk that's here in the Scottish borders, he was as happy as Larry. And that day we went to the village green in St Boswell's, and all the people came out, and we did a concert on the village green. And again, I took him back up to Edinburgh, and we did a lot of filming in Edinburgh. And just before he left, he said, you know, Jesse, he said, I wish I'd come to Scotland first before we made the album. And I said, I know, Roger, you know, that's just the way it goes. So I think really, if we go back to his dad, I think the stories that his dad told him about Scotland, I think what happened with the Thistle album was it turned into a wee bit of Brigadoon funk instead of P-funk. And that was just because he hadn't come to Scotland first. But that doesn't matter. It was such a joy working with him. A phenomenal person, an amazing talent. And some of the little stories I've heard there, even when Shirley was saying it, yeah, you know, Roger would be working all night, and, you know, you just fall asleep with his guitar on his lap, you know, and we'd just all crash the way we were, and then we'd just all start up and start it again. And yeah, when I heard about the tragedy with Larry and Roger, that really hurt me a lot, you know. I think was it 26th April 99? Because I was going through a really hard time here as well, you know, fighting the banks, and I'm the only person in Scotland to have ever beaten the 5th biggest bank in the world. But it took me 18 years, you know. And so I knew that the pressures of things that were going on, if you couldn't get product out and you'd invested so much in stuff, as I said, you know, the amount of money, my own money, because I paid for all my own music videos, the record labels didn't pay for it. You know, if you believe in something, you know, you've got to go for it. And, you know, I was pioneering music video at the time, and yeah, I couldn't get investment, so I just had to put all my own money into my work. And it was the same thing with Larry. You know, I had such respect for Larry Troutman. Not only was a brilliant bloke and a great brother to everybody, But, you know, he really wanted to change the lives of people in Dayton. And he wanted to build houses and, you know, do fantastic things. But when I heard about it, oh, you know, I just said, oh my God. But I understood, you know, I understood that it wasn't, you know, it wasn't Larry that did what happened there. You know, it was the pressure of all the belief that he had and he wanted to do, but didn't have the resources anymore to do it. And it was just a great tragedy. But the happy side of things is that I went down to Manchester, was it a year ago or 2 years ago? And I was going to be doing the support for the band there, but there was a carry-on with the promoter. But Zap came over to Manchester, and it was a wonderful show, and it was just great to see everybody, you know, keeping the spirit of Roger alive with the music.
You know, this has been so fascinating, and I'm just so intrigued. But there's a couple of things I want to make sure we get in, and one is tell us about your radio show that you do over there. I'd like to hear about that, and then we'll move on to my next question.
Well, Brick FM is the unofficial or official, what could I call it, satellite for the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Centre.
Okay.
At the moment, we have about, well, it's a funk and soul station in the Scottish borders, and we still let some of the local people participate in what they like to do. But basically, I'm broadcasting all the chronicles that you've recorded there, the sound for all the chronicles, and all your own program there, Ryan.
Oh my!
Oh yeah,
Now,
it's on rotation all the time, and that's the way that I work. It's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and we've just been granted a new 5-year license. So for the next 5 years, the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Centre, all the programs that you're doing, I'm broadcasting the sound. So that's what I'm really doing. I'm going to be building that up for the next 5 years, so that basically, if anyone wants to know about the Funk Music Hall of Fame, then all they have to do is tune in to Brick FM.
you know, that is, you had, I remember you calling me to tell me that we were on your show, and at the time, my computer savvy is a little limited. I'm a primitive modern woman, and so you know, I do the best I can, and
Ryan, I heard you say, someone said this, and I hope it's true. You don't have a television.
I do not. I do.
That is so great. That is so great.
I am
when you were
truly.
talking about,
my car is even a standard shift, and I have roll windows and manual locks. So I call it my exercise machine.
When they drop the bomb that does all that, knocks out all the electronics of things, you'll still be driving along the road, putting your window down and putting it up.
You know what? And I tell you, Jesse, I could probably make a fortune then, because I'll probably be one of the few Ubers around. Because everything else is going to be shut down. Now, I need you to serenade me. I mean, something special for me, Jesse. Take one of your songs and kind of like give me a few bars of it, you know, so I know that I'm special to you today.
When you're sitting on your own and you feel the city life surround you, and he's always on the phone and you just don't think that you can fight it. Don't give up, 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 darling, in what we dream.
Aw, thank you.
The words here in the song, we'll go on and on and on with our love Yeah, I wanna be inside out. Oh, darling, I've got to be so deep that you'll be needing me inside out. That's for you, Ryan.
Jesse, thank you. Tell me, what city were you born in, Jesse?
A little village, a little town along here called Galashiels.
In Scotland.
Yeah.
And where do you reside now?
I'm about 9 miles away from where I was born. A place called Clint, Mains.
So do you still do some farming?
Oh yeah. I've got, as I said, I'm doing a show on Friday in Edinburgh at the art school in Edinburgh. I'm going to be launching the Scottish version of the Worae album.
Now, where's your radio station located?
Right here. I'm like Turk. I built, when I pioneered ISDN, I decided that this was a way for me to connect up with all my musical friends around the world and still be here. Because I couldn't afford to fly out to the States at the time. So how it works is that the ISDN is in here. I record the programs from the station, we're about a mile away from me here, and I can send and record the programs. So when you do your next show, I'll take the sound off the internet of the program, and from here I'll broadcast it to about a mile away to the station, and then it goes out on the FM and also on the internet at the same time. And you know what? I'm gonna tell you this, Jesse. First of all, this has been a very exciting opportunity for me to interview you. You have been such an exciting and incredible person, the history that you have brought to the Funk Chronicles. I also want to thank you for promoting the funk music in Scotland. That's so important to us as we try to make this national and international Funk Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center. And your dedication and your commitment to Bernie is just phenomenal, and I'm excited about seeing this special whiskey. And I really admire how dedicated you have been to the funk, from the P-Funk to even coming down to the Dayton Funk, and your experiences, sharing your experiences with the Troutmans will be so meaningful in the historical archives of the funk music. So Ryan, yes. you know what it is about Dayton? Because for the last 10 years, I've had this drawing, obsession with Dayton, and I couldn't understand it. And it was only when I heard about, through the previous mayor, that there was going to be a Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Centre established there, that it clicked. Because I actually contacted, I can't remember the name of the gentleman, because I was wanting to try open up, as I'm going to do now, and this is another little exciting thing as well, is that because I filmed Roger in the hills here and going along Princess Street in Edinburgh, and Bernie all over the place, and Steve Jordan up the top of the hill, and all these great funk guys. I want to start now, and that's why I'm saying an international airport. Come on, you invented flying in Dayton. Where's the international airport? Roll it out, and let's start getting families from Dayton flying over here and doing the funk trail, going around the Scottish borders and looking at all the places and the history and where Roger and all the guys recorded and filmed. That's what I want to do. So originally that was the idea when I contacted the mayor, and he taught me then about the Funk Music Hall of Fame going to be established there. And I thought, wonderful. And I have to thank you and David and all the team and Mr. G there, you know, for inviting me anyway, because it is such an honor for me to be on the Funk Chronicles. And this feeling that I have, same as Bernie, is for Dayton and the people of Dayton. And when I've been listening to the programs, it's been a great enlightenment for me, because as I said to you, you know, being a P-Funk, a Scots P-Funk lad, you know, the New Jersey in that area where I worked, you know, was really where I thought the funk came from. But listening to the Chronicles, listening to the stories, listening to all the bands, Dayton and you know, all the bands that have come out of, and the songs. Some of the songs that I had no idea were originating in Dayton. That to me enlightened me more. And then listening to the stories, some of them quite sad in a way, of some musicians who really lost their homes during the hard times, and I know what that was like, because I had to fight for mine. And as I said, I'm the only person that's ever won in the world against a major bank like that. But it takes it out of you, you know, and out of your career as well. You know, it's hard. So to hear these stories of those great musicians that have come out there, Always and Forever, what a great song that was. You know, I had no idea it came from Dayton. The fact is that what I want now, having the Brick FM established in the Scottish borders here, is I want our cultures to really merge together now. And I have a great respect, not only for all the Troutman family, who are wonderful people, but all the musicians from the bands that you've had on your programs. And one of the things that when I do come to Dayton again, it would be wonderful if we could all do, especially for the Funk Music Hall of Fame, if we could all come together and do a massive recording with some of these musicians that maybe feel that, you know, they've not been given the credit, and they've not been given the adulation that they really deserved. Maybe it'd be wonderful. I know Stevie Washington's still there working away. You know, I know that, and as you know, with Inside Out, that's a whole story in itself. You know how that came about. But my association with Slave and Jimmy Douglas, you know, there's so much there that is positive that I'm really looking forward to when the doors are open finally on this amazing organisation, and that Dayton, which is the centre of funk for the world, and I will state that now, that the rest of the world will really appreciate. And as one of your interviewees mentioned, it is now time for funk to be a category in the musical honours. For too long now, and this would obviously help a lot of the Dayton bands. For too long now, funk has been brushed aside and not been given the category and it deserves. And now there should be a new category in the Grammys for funk music, and I'm really looking forward to that happening, so that people again will look at Dayton and what you're doing there as being the most important thing in the world.
There's nothing else to be said. Thank you, Jesse Rae. This is Rhine McLin for the Funk Chronicles, and I want to say, until the next time, keep it funky.
All I see is for me. Over the sea. Here is where I seem to be.
wanna be inside out. Ha! Oh, darling, I've got to be so deep that you be wanting me inside out. Oh, darling, true story.